Ladies and gentlemen, your governor, Scott Walker.
Well, thanks, and thanks to all of you for being here, particularly to our great leaders, which I'll touch on in a moment, to our task force members, to our supporters, to all of you, but thanks most of all to the families and friends who are here today. John Nygren talked about this being our fourth tour, and I got to tell you the reason is not only because he's done a phenomenal job, which he has, having the courage to tell the story in his family and to get his colleagues in both parties to overwhelmingly support today's legislation as well as the stuff we've done before then. But the real reason, John, I think you know, is, and you've had me at listening sessions where we've done this before and other events along the way, is because the stories I hear, like each of yours, and it just is so compelling for us. When we think about that phrase over there, think about hope, which started out originally with the first series of bills, thinking about HOPE as the acronym for hope, or for heroin, opioid prevention and education, and then kind of evolving, and now today thinking about taking that hope and applying it towards action so that we can go on, we can all go on, and those yet to come can go on, living in a society where hopefully we're free of addiction and free of the challenges and the pain and the suffering that come from all the different types of addictions that are out there. And we know here in this state, in this country, and really now around the world, that this challenge, this crisis, knows no boundaries. I just came from the National Governors Association meeting where we not only talked about it as governors as we have in the past, in each of the last several years worth of meetings, we've been talking about it. We even have a nationwide compact that Wisconsin is a part of as well, where we agreed to do certain things to try and combat this. But we as governors were talking about the other day, and then on Friday the Vice President of the United States came and Mike Pence was talking about it. And then to show you there really are no boundaries, the Prime Minister of Canada, Prime Minister Trudeau, came, and at the end of his discussions he talked about this very issue. Because it doesn't just stop at our state line, it doesn't just stop at our borders to the north, it goes into Canada. It's something we're seeing around the world, and so our solutions can know no boundaries either. It's part of the reason why, even though, as John mentioned, and Brad Schimmel has mentioned this to me before in his leadership nationally, talking to other attorneys general across the nation, law enforcement folks, saying that Wisconsin, particularly because of John Nygren's leadership, has been at the forefront of passing legislation that deals not just with law enforcement, but with prevention, with access to Narcan, to dollars for mental health treatment, for other assortment of things out there, which we'll be adding to with the several bills we're signing today. But even though we lead, that's not good enough. That's not good enough until we have no more stories, no more pictures, no more families that are touched by this crisis. And it's one of those where we need everybody to be a part of the solution. Certainly, it's part of the reason why we created the task force, and why not only John Nygren but our remarkable Lieutenant Governor stepped up to co-chair that, why Brad Schimmel again was a part of that, why the task force members from municipal government, county government, tribal government, from the private sector, from both parties and both chambers in the legislature, from higher education, from K through 12 education, from criminal justice and justice system, from pharmacies to nurses to healthcare professionals and physicians. Everybody's got to be a part of it. In fact, I said this is such a growing issue, even with the things we've done. I mentioned over the weekend when I was talking to a couple of my colleagues, fellow governors, I mentioned all those different groups, and so we're going to be signing some bills today. I said, but it has gotten so broad that, and they were shocked to hear this. I said, we even have in our stakeholders now realtors. And they looked at me kind of funny, like I did the first time I heard that. And I said, realtors? I said, yeah, because real estate agents now need to tell the sellers of homes that before they have an open house, they need to take all the prescription drugs out of their medicine cabinets, because people suffering from addiction will go to that link to go through an open house to actually try and find prescription drugs to feed that addiction. And so, as Brad Schimmel probably mentioned, we can't arrest our way. Law enforcement alone, although for those who are at the forefront of pushing us, certainly we're going to crack down in that. And part of today's legislation, particularly when we go down Alaska to the police department, is going to be a part of that. But we got to have others involved. It's why earlier today we were at the Medical College of Wisconsin, Green Bay, and De Pere at the St. Norbert's campus, because a number of those bills, the new laws now tie into the healthcare community. And today here we purposely picked UC Everest, and so thank you for welcoming us here, and thanks to the School Boards Association and other partners in higher education for being a part of this, because we know as well it's got to be education as well as prevention that's a part of it from the earliest ages all the way up. And then later we'll be at a police department in Alaska outside of La Crosse, because yes, there is a law enforcement component as well, but we've got to have everybody involved. You know, we're pleased that we've got not only drop-off sites at municipal sites, at police departments, now many of our chain and otherwise drugstores across the state are offering places to deposit leftover prescription drugs. Because as we've heard time and time again with story after story, as Brad mentioned the numbers, but the numbers are shown in the faces here and other faces and stories that we've heard across the state. Over 80% of all the heroin addicts didn't start out on heroin. They started out in some sort of prescription drug. And I say prescription drug because opioid is the technical name, but I think for most people, particularly for those who might be watching on this story, they don't get it. It's a prescription drug. It's in your house right now. And we all have a role to play. Those who don't even think that we do. And when you think of, you look through your cabinet and say, what am I doing with these leftover drugs that I got from whatever it might be? And it's a tough case to make because we're not telling people not to take their medicine, because there's medicine that's rightfully, properly prescribed that needs to be taken, but watch what you're taking, particularly when it comes to painkillers. I know because of the years of hearing tragic story after tragic story, even in our own household. 2 years ago, our son, Matthew, we've got two boys, Matt and Alex. Matthew's 23. Excuse me, a couple years ago, he had all four of his wisdom teeth pulled. He waited between Christmas and New Year's. It was a good time to do it. He hung around with us at the house. And because of the stories we had heard, even though he was prescribed a painkiller, we did all that we could to insist on him taking Advil and getting him ice and a lot of ice cream and a lot of other things to keep him from doing that. Not because there's necessarily wrong with a painkiller, but because I still vividly remember, John, the person you introduced me to, the mother who told me about her daughter who had her wisdom teeth pulled and got Oxycontin and had no clue or no understanding, never even dreamed that it was even possible to become addicted to something like that. And the tragic end to that story was that mother showed me a picture, like the pictures here today, of her daughter who died of an overdose because of her addiction that started from those painkillers after pulling the wisdom teeth. And so this is an issue unlike anything else. When we talk about drugs, usually people think about big urban areas here and across America. It can happen in small towns and big cities, in suburbs, and anywhere in between. It knows no boundaries. It doesn't matter based on age or race or religion, where you live, what you do, what party affiliation you have. It affects everyone in the state. In some way or another, we are all affected by people we know, either in our family or our circle of friends. It affects others across this country and around the world. And so we've got to continue to do, and this is not a mission accomplished. There's no mission accomplished banner up here. But for us, it's just the next giant step forward. But we've got to continue on that path so that we have to hear no more of those stories that lead us to this point. And just to show you how timeless, I haven't even told folks in here, because about 5 minutes down the road there, I was just finishing up an interview as we came back. One of the stations in Appleton asked, they hadn't been able to go up to DePere for the bill signing, and they asked if I'd do a quick interview. And she said, "Did you hear? They just told us one of the cities in the Fox cities, so over in the region just where Appleton's at, was actually, I think, down in Nashville. This morning at 12:30 in the morning, a police officer from one of the local departments showed up for someone who had overdosed, and in the attempt to revive that person, somehow got exposed to the residue, and after leaving the site, had enough sense to realize that something was happening and pulled over and called for assistance, and they had to administer Narcan. We were talking about somebody in Ohio. This is somebody right here in the last 24 hours in the state of Wisconsin. And that was just someone as a first responder responding to something. So when you look at this, it's not just about access, it's about the intensity of what we're dealing with and the exposure that people can have. We've got to deal with it in every way, in every possible means forward. And so we appreciate all the folks here today that are supportive of this. Part of the reason why we're signing these bills so publicly is not just the sign of the law, but hopefully for all of you, not just the media, but for all of you and your circle of friends, family, and influence that you have, will help tell that story. I don't know what Matthew may or may not have done if we hadn't been aware of that, but I hate to think about it. If we hadn't been aware of that story, And we could have been very easily, just like anyone else behind me or anyone else around the state who's got a family member or a friend who suffered through addiction, we could have very easily been in that situation as well. And so our hope is that through our actions, that we can inspire changes all across the state that allow us to go forward and live lives free of addiction and free of the pain and the suffering that all too often has come from those who suffered from addiction in the past. Thank you for being with us here today. Let's sign these on the wall.
That's right, keep out your face. It's my eyesight. It's not, I get bifocal contacts. He's got a glasses.
Shouldn't give away your secrets.
Right.
I don't want to look cool with my sunglasses.
So I go through. Yeah. No, mine worked, but that's why John was kidding about. When I gave him this, I said, "There's no way he's going to
Read it anyway.
So this is the first bill here. This is actually Assembly Special Session Bill 1, and this will be Act number 29 today. If I had elementary school kids here today, they'd ask, why do you need so many pens, right?